Hey, how are you doing? In today's video, I want to talk to you about one ancient rule to stop overthinking everything. You know, I've been doing this work for 30 years, and I'm telling you, overthinking is the modern plague. It's worse than anxiety. It's worse than depression, because overthinking is the thing that creates both of those. I see it every single day in my office. Smart people, capable people, people who've accomplished real things, and they're paralyzed, absolutely paralyzed by their own minds. A woman sits down across from me. She hasn't slept properly in 4 months. 4 months. She keeps replaying a conversation she had with her boss. A 10-second conversation. She's analyzed it from every angle. She's imagined every possible interpretation. She's convinced herself that she's going to get fired. Her marriage is suffering because she's distant. Her kids are asking why mom seems so sad. And it all started with one sentence that her boss said that she's now convinced meant something terrible. A man comes in. He's been offered a promotion, a real opportunity. But he won't take it. Why? Because he's spent 6 weeks thinking about all the ways it could go wrong. He's imagined failure scenarios that haven't even happened yet. He's living in a future that doesn't exist, and it's paralyzing his present. A young person tells me they can't start their business. They can't reach out to someone they care about. They can't make a decision about their future because they keep spinning, thinking, analyzing, going in circles, round and round and round in their own head until they're so exhausted that they can't move forward. And the worst part? They think this is intelligence. They think this is being careful. They think this is wisdom. But it's not. It's a trap. And the trap is closing tighter every single day. If you're someone who gets stuck in your own mind, who knows what overthinking feels like, hit that subscribe button right now. Because we're about to talk about something that's going to change how you make decisions forever. This isn't theory. This is something you can use today. But to understand how this all started, I want to show you what you're going to discover in the next few minutes. You're going to learn why your brain is wired to overthink. You're going to understand the exact moment when thinking becomes overthinking. And, most importantly, you're going to discover an ancient rule that will give you permission to stop. Because here's the thing, your mind will never give you permission to stop on its own. Your brain will always want one more analysis, one more angle, one more consideration. And if you wait for your brain to feel certain, you'll be waiting forever. Because certainty doesn't exist. And when you finally understand that, everything changes. And on that day, everything seemed perfectly normal. You woke up and faced a choice, a real choice, something that mattered. Maybe it was a decision about your career. Maybe it was choosing whether to end a relationship. Maybe it was deciding if you should move, or start something new, or take a risk on yourself. And your brain did what it's supposed to do. It started to think. It gathered information. It considered possibilities. It weighed the pros and cons. And for a while, that felt productive. That felt like you were being responsible. That felt like you were being smart. So you kept thinking. You looked at the decision from another angle. You imagined what could go wrong. You imagined what could go right. You thought about what other people might think. You thought about your past experiences and what they might tell you about this new situation. You thought about all the variables you couldn't control. And you kept thinking. Days passed. You were still thinking. You talked to friends. You got their opinions. And now you had more to think about. You read articles. You watched videos. You looked for guidance. And now you had even more information to process. Your mind was working overtime. It felt like progress. It felt like you were getting closer to an answer. But something was happening underneath that you didn't notice. You were starting to feel heavier. The decision that seemed simple when you first faced it was now feeling impossible. The weight of all that thinking was crushing you. And the worst part was that you weren't getting closer to clarity. You were getting further away from it. The reality break comes quietly. You realize you've been thinking about this for weeks, or months, or longer, and you're no clearer than when you started. In fact, you're more confused, more stuck, more paralyzed. Because now you've thought about it so much that you can argue both sides of the decision perfectly. You can make a case for yes, you can make a case for no, and neither one feels right. You start to feel desperate. You need to know. You need certainty. You need a guarantee that you're making the right choice. So you think harder. You analyze deeper. You look for one more piece of information that will finally tip the scales and make the answer obvious. But it never comes. The information keeps multiplying. The angles keep expanding. Your mind keeps spinning. And somewhere in the middle of all that spinning, you lose track of something crucial. You've forgotten that you're allowed to just choose. The psychological wound is deeper than the decision itself. It's not really about the choice you're facing. It's about something that happened in your past. Something that taught you that if you thought hard enough, if you analyzed enough, if you gathered enough information, you could control the outcome. You could guarantee success. You could prevent failure. Maybe a parent was unpredictable, so you learned to watch, to analyze, to try to figure out what they would do next so you could prepare, so you could stay safe. Maybe you failed at something important, and afterward, you told yourself that if you had just thought about it more, if you had just prepared better, if you had just analyzed the risks more carefully, you could have prevented it. Maybe you made a decision quickly and it went wrong, and now you carry the belief that fast decisions are dangerous, that if you just think long enough, you can prevent disaster. So now, when you face any decision, your mind goes into overdrive. Not because the decision deserves that much thinking, but because some part of you still believes that enough thinking will give you control. Enough thinking will give you certainty. Enough thinking will let you predict the future. But that's a lie. And the real pain isn't the overthinking itself. The real pain is the isolation, the loneliness of being trapped in your own mind, the exhaustion of spinning endlessly, the shame of knowing that other people can make decisions while you're stuck, the fear that something is wrong with you, the feeling that you're broken in some way because your mind won't stop. The silence is suffocating. You can't explain it to people who don't experience it. You can't make them understand why you can't just decide. They say things like, just pick one, or you're thinking too much. And you want to scream because it's not that simple. It's not that easy. Your mind doesn't work like that. And so you isolate. You pull away from people. You avoid situations where you have to decide. You create smaller and smaller boxes for yourself because inside those boxes, there are fewer decisions to make, fewer variables, fewer chances to mess up. But inside the box, you're slowly suffocating. If you've ever felt that kind of mental exhaustion, that feeling of being trapped in your own mind, leave a comment down below right now. Tell me about it. Share your experience. You're not alone in this, and I read every single comment. Now, the Bible has a story about this exact wound, and it's the story of Martha and Mary. And I want you to really listen to this because Martha's story is a lot of people's story. It's a lot of your story. Jesus comes to visit. Martha is excited. She's preparing. She's planning. She's thinking about all the details. She wants everything to be perfect. She's cleaning and cooking and organizing. There's so much to do, so much to think about, so much to get right. And while Martha is in her head, spinning with all the details, Mary sits at Jesus' feet. She just sits there. She's present. She's listening. She's not worried about whether the food is perfect or the house is clean, or whether she's making the right choices about hospitality. And Martha gets frustrated. She comes to Jesus and says, "Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." But Jesus says something that cuts right through all of Martha's thinking. He says, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." Look at what Jesus says. He doesn't say Martha is bad. He doesn't say thinking is bad. He says Martha is worried and upset about many things. He identifies the real problem: distraction, fragmentation, too much thinking about too many details. And Mary chose what is better. Not because Mary is smarter or more spiritual, but because Mary chose presence over analysis. Mary chose trust over control. Mary chose to be here now instead of being trapped in her mind about all the things that could go wrong. Martha's wound is that she believes the outcome depends on her thinking. She believes that if she thinks hard enough and plans well enough and controls enough variables, everything will turn out okay. She's trying to use her mind to guarantee safety, and it's exhausting her. It's fragmenting her. It's keeping her from the one thing that actually matters. And here's what breaks my heart about Martha. She's smart. She's capable. She's trying to do the right thing. Her intention is good, but her mind has become her prison. Jesus is telling her that she's choosing the wrong master. She's letting her thinking be the master instead of letting trust be the master. She's letting her analysis run the show instead of being present for what's actually happening right now. And that's the real crisis. Not the decision you're facing, but the fact that you're letting your mind run your life. Here's what I've learned in 30 years of practice. Your brain is not your friend when it comes to decisions. Your brain is a prediction machine. It's trying to keep you alive. It's scanning for danger. It's imagining worst-case scenarios. And it does this automatically. You can't turn it off, but you can stop trusting it completely. Because here's the brutal truth. Your brain will generate an infinite amount of thinking if you let it. Your brain will create scenarios that don't exist. Your brain will find reasons to be afraid. Your brain will argue with itself forever. And if you keep listening to your brain, you'll never decide anything. So here's what I want you to understand. And I want you to really hear this. Overthinking is not a sign that you're being careful. Overthinking is a sign that you don't trust yourself. And that's the real issue we need to fix. You don't trust yourself to handle the consequences of a wrong decision. You don't trust yourself to adapt if things go sideways. You don't trust yourself to be resilient if it doesn't work out. So you keep thinking. You keep analyzing. You keep searching for a guarantee that doesn't exist. But here's the ancient rule that changes everything. And this comes from the book of Proverbs. And it's simple. It says this: "In the multitude of counselors there is safety, but in the multitude of thoughts there is madness." Okay, that's not exactly how Proverbs words it, but that's what it means. And here's why this matters. When you're stuck in overthinking, you're in the multitude of thoughts. You're listening to every voice in your head. You're considering every angle. You're weighing every possibility. And you're going insane because the human mind isn't designed to hold all of that at once. But here's the ancient wisdom. Seek counsel. Talk to people you trust. Get perspective from outside your own head. But then, you have to do something radical. You have to decide to stop thinking. You have to decide that you've gathered enough information. You have to draw a line and say, "This is enough analysis. Now, I'm going to trust myself." The ancient rule is this: think as much as you need to gather the information, but think no more than that. Not because thinking is bad, but because there's a point where more thinking doesn't give you more clarity. It gives you more confusion. There's a point where more analysis doesn't give you more wisdom. It gives you more paralysis. And your job is to find that point, and then stop. Here's what I tell people in my office. I say, give yourself a deadline. You get 1 week to think about this, or 1 month, or whatever feels reasonable. But you don't get forever. You don't get unlimited. You get a boundary. And then I say, here's the rule. You gather information. You talk to people you trust. You pray, if that's something you do. You consider the options. But after your deadline, you stop thinking and you choose. You don't get to keep spinning. You don't get to keep looking for the perfect answer. You choose with the information you have and the wisdom you can gather in that time frame. And here's the thing that people tell me afterward. The relief is immediate. Not because the decision was easy, but because the endless spinning stopped, because your nervous system is exhausted. It's tired from all that thinking, and the moment you make a choice and stick with it, your nervous system gets to relax. And when your nervous system relaxes, you start to see clearly. You start to feel better. You start to be present in your actual life instead of trapped in your theoretical one. And here's the second part of the ancient wisdom. Accept that you might be wrong, and you'll survive it. This is the hidden fear underneath all the overthinking. The fear that if you choose wrong, you'll be destroyed. You'll be humiliated. You'll be ruined. And so you keep thinking, trying to prevent that disaster. But the truth is, you've already survived being wrong before. You've made bad decisions. You're still here. You're okay. You might not be thrilled about those decisions, but you didn't get destroyed. You adapted. You moved forward. And you'll do it again. The ancient rule isn't about making perfect decisions. It's about trusting yourself to handle imperfect outcomes. It's about believing that you're resilient enough to recover if you choose wrong. It's about understanding that a wrong decision isn't a disaster. It's just information. It's just feedback. And you'll use it to make a better decision next time. And here's the third part. Stop seeking certainty. Start seeking alignment. You're looking for certainty, a guarantee, a sign from heaven that you're making the right choice. But certainty doesn't exist. Every decision has risk. Every path has unknown variables. And if you wait for certainty, you'll wait forever. But alignment? Alignment is different. Alignment is asking, does this choice feel true to my values? Does it align with who I want to be? Does it move me toward the life I want to create? Not, is this the perfect choice? But, is this choice in line with my integrity? And that's something you can know. You can feel that. Your body knows that. Your spirit knows that. Your intuition knows that. When Martha was worried about the details, she had lost alignment. She was so focused on doing the right things that she'd forgotten why she was doing them. Mary was aligned. She was focused on what actually mattered. She was present. She was connected to what was true. And that's the choice you have to make. Every single time you're facing a decision, you have to choose between alignment and analysis. Here's what this looks like practically. You're facing a decision. First, you gather information. You think about it. You talk to people you trust. You pray. You pray. You reflect. You get good data. That might take a week. It might take a month. But you give yourself a boundary. Then you ask yourself one question. What choice would the person I want to be make right now? Not, what choice is guaranteed to work? But, what choice is aligned with who I want to become? And then you choose. You commit to that choice. You stop analyzing. You trust yourself. You move forward. And yes, it might go wrong. But I'm telling you from 30 years of experience, the regret you'll feel from not choosing is bigger than any regret you'll feel from choosing wrong. Because at least you're living. At least you're moving. At least you're being the kind of person who trusts themselves and takes action. And here's what happens when you practice this. Your mind starts to relax. Your nervous system settles. You start to feel grounded again. You start to be present with the people you love. You start to do the work in front of you instead of the work in your head. And your life actually starts to move forward. My wife and I, we talk about this all the time, and she'll remind me when I'm starting to overthink. She'll say, "Are you gathering information, or are you spinning?" And if I'm spinning, she'll say, "It's time to decide." And you know what? She's always right. The decision I make when I stop overthinking is almost always better than the one I would have made if I'd kept thinking. Because overthinking isn't wisdom. Wisdom is knowing when you have enough information to decide. Wisdom is trusting yourself. Wisdom is being present instead of being trapped in your mind. So let me circle back to where we started. You're exhausted by your own thinking. You feel trapped in your mind. You can't decide because you keep looking for certainty. You keep searching for the perfect answer. and you feel like something is wrong with you because you can't just choose like normal people do. But here's what I want you to know. Nothing is wrong with you. You've just been given the wrong framework. You've been told that more thinking equals more wisdom. But it doesn't. You've been taught that you should be able to predict the future if you analyze hard enough. But you can't. And the moment you let go of that false belief, you're free. The ancient rule is simple. Think enough to gather wisdom, then choose. Then trust yourself to handle whatever comes. That's it. That's the whole thing. If this resonated with you, if you know that feeling of being stuck in your own mind, hit that like button. And subscribe to the channel if you're ready to talk about the stuff that actually matters in life. We do this every single week. And leave a comment down below and tell me this. What's one decision you've been overthinking? Just one. Tell me about it in the comments. Because you're not alone in this, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear so they can finally give themselves permission to stop thinking and start living. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time.